Do all of your Terraria NPCs live in box houses? Do your Minecraft villagers live in dirt huts or holes in the ground? Do you wish you could build something a little more extravagant? Perhaps it's you that's stuck in the dirt hut or the Terraria box house. But don't worry, because I'm going to help you think outside it. Now, a question I get asked a lot is how do I come up with all these build ideas? And the simple answer is, well, it's my imagination. But what is imagination, and how do you become more imaginative? Well, personally, I don't believe that you are either born imaginative or not, and that's the way you'll be forever. I do think you can increase your imagination, and I'll use an African proverb for this because, well, I just like African proverbs. So, knowledge is a garden. If it isn't cultivated, you can't harvest it. So, how do we cultivate our imagination so we can harvest these great builds? Well, my simple formula for imagination is inspiration equals imagination times knowledge / skill equals good builds. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, it's simple. The more inspiration you come across, the more imaginative you will be, and that paired with your skill and or knowledge will equal you creating fantastic builds. But where does inspiration come from? Well, several places. The main one being other media, and that can be pre-established franchises, movies, TV shows, manga, comics, artwork, even books. And you may have also heard the proverb, nothing new under the sun, which expresses the idea that nothing is truly new or unique, and everything has been done before in some form or another. But even if everything has already been done, we can still take pre-existing ideas and change them in some way to make them relatively unique. So take my Terraria Crabshack build for example. I was inspired by the fishing shop in another game called Sunhaven. The entrance to my Minecraft base is just a giant flame chariot from Elden Ring. And I'm currently clearing an area for my next Terraria build, which will be a great iron fortress, with my main inspirations coming from the Iron Keep in Dark Souls 2, the Iron Golem boss from Castlevania, and some AI generated artwork. But there is a difference between plagiarism and inspiration. You can't just lazily copy these ideas completely. So how would you differentiate it? Well, the easiest way for me is simply to combine two ideas together. So for example, my Witchwood Festival build in Terraria, where I combined the magical night market from Stardew Valley with the atmosphere of Witchwood, which is an area in the original Fable game. And if you don't want to combine two ideas, then you can just put your own spin on a pre-existing one, or at least change it in some way. So for example, my Flame Chariot base is kind of just ripped off from Elden Ring, but it's also not a chariot, it's 10 times the size, and it's also been repurposed as a base entrance as opposed to a siege weapon. So although it is very similar, it has been changed enough to where it isn't just a complete rip-off. And when I spoke about getting inspiration from books or knowledge, what I mean by that is the more you know, the more things you have to draw from to come up with these ideas. One example being my Terraria NPC Truffle House. So the truffle is a giant mushroom. So I decided that his house would be a giant grasshopper that had been infected by the Ophiocordyceps fungus, which is a fungus that infects insects and mind controls them and then breaks out of their body in like fungal fruit to release more spores. Now, if I never read up about the Ophiocordyceps fungus or watched a documentary on it or however I learned about it, then I would have never came up with this idea. So the more things you know in real life, the more facts about history, science, whatever, the more things you will have to draw on. It's like a library in a way of ideas that you'll be able to cultivate, and eventually you should be able to come up with some pretty wacky stuff from those. And point number 2, you need to have a plan. So some people may be able to just whip up something on the spot that looks okay, but for the majority of the time, if you go into a build with no idea what design you're going to use, no idea what the materials are going to be, then it's going to end up looking pretty. You need a plan before you start building. Now, for some people, this is as simple as a mental image in their mind, This is the case for me. I can pretty accurately visualize what the build's going to look like before I start building, but some people may need to take it a step further. In that case, just making simple sketches on like pieces of paper with ballpoint pens just to get a rough idea of the outline of the build, of what components it's going to include, is very helpful, especially for things that are a little bit larger in scale and or complexity. And now I'm not saying you need to just create a guideline and stick to it completely rigidly. Whilst you are building, most of the time your ideas on the design will evolve, because, you know, you'll be placing things down, getting an idea for how things look. You'll have new ideas, you'll think of new details or things you'd like to include, and so it's natural the build will change over time, but it's still good to have a baseline idea of what you want to get out of it before you start to, you know, deviate from it, because otherwise you're literally just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that it sticks. And that brings me on to my third point. So you need to know the materials available to you in the game. So an artist wouldn't start painting without knowledge of the colours and the kind of paint he was using, what colour they create when mixed, etc. And in the same vein, you do need to know the materials before you attempt building in these games. This is very, very pivotal, because take Minecraft for example, people will use different blocks for different things. The colours in Minecraft are really desaturated, so you'll find that, you know, for example, you might have wood that looks better as something else, like a type of concrete. So it's very important that you know the textures and colours of the blocks, especially in Minecraft, because as I said, they are very desaturated and you can use them for different things. Also, there are no detail blocks or furniture blocks in Minecraft, so you will have to create your own. Here's a little example here of a build that I did a while ago. So this is a small little wheelbarrow inside a barn, and you'll see it is made from a composter, a fence gate, and a grindstone. Now, if you didn't have a good knowledge of the working blocks, you probably wouldn't be able to know how to make these little detail items like this. And knowledge of materials is also important in Terraria as well, because just because of the sheer amount of options you have in that game, not only will you have hundreds of blocks, you'll have, you know, you'll have furniture sets, items, paints, background walls, things like echo coating to make things invisible. In both games, you'll also have wiring / redstone as well, which is a further element you can add to your builds. And how well you know these materials is going to determine the level of things you can create with them. Now, one great tool for this is the wikis for both games, which have a list of all the blocks and items you can obtain and build with. And this really helped me out a while ago. I remember when I was building my Terraria stylist house, I had real trouble finding a block that looked enough like a giant seashell. And eventually I found these marble blocks, and I discovered that if you paint them pink, they do look a little bit like a seashell, and I ended up using these in the end. So that's just one example of how the wiki helped me personally, and how knowledge and materials will aid you in your building endeavors. So what I would advise is, before you start building in either Minecraft or Terraria, just have a quick look at the wiki and make a little note of all the blocks or items you think would fit in that build, and then you're free to experiment with them from there. That's all for now. I hope you found these tips useful. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.